For 6 centuries, the Vothari War College had never lost a simulation. Today, they issued a challenge that felt like a death sentence.
Let the humans prove themselves, a war game for the border. Or watch their fleets burn.
No one can match them. This is an execution, not a game.
The broadcast hit Earth's command like a hammer. The Vothari Sims were flawless. They had never been beaten.
Find a champion against 600 years of perfection. That person doesn't exist.
But refusing meant war, and war meant annihilation. Earth accepted.
Every name on this list has already lost to a Vothari simulation. There's no one left.
Generals, heroes, synthetic minds. She scrolled past them all. None could win.
They need a miracle. Where do I find that?
The reply was transmitted. We accept. Sending our representative. But no one knew who that could be.
Every file is the same. Top of their class, perfect sim scores, and every one of them beaten by a Vothari.
Desperation made her glance at a personal photo. A girl and an old man with fishing poles, a memory from years ago.
Frank Calloway. He was the only one who ever made me think about why wars end. Not just how they're fought.
She pulled up his file, logistics officer, retired, specialization, non-kinetic strategic denial, no combat medals.
Calloway.
Frank, it's Elena Voss. I need your help.
Elena Voss? The lieutenant who argued with simulators. Been a decade. What's got you calling an old fisherman?
The Vothari challenged Earth to a war game. We don't have a strategist who can beat them.
A war game? At my age? You sure you've got the right number?
I am sure. You are the only one who taught me to think around corners, not through them.
All right, on one condition. Someone needs to feed my koi.
His fish. The galaxy's most dangerous war game, and he's negotiating fish sitting.
Elena couldn't tell if he was joking. But Frank Calloway never joked about logistics, even the logistics of a retired life.
I'll send you the feeding schedule. Don't overfeed, they bloat.
He packed a single bag, a change of clothes, an old data pad, and a photo of his late wife.
The universe wants a war hero. It's getting a fisherman with a talent for knowing where the hooks are.
As the transport arrived, he took one last look at the lake. The water was still, perfect for fishing. He climbed aboard and the shuttle lifted away. Earth below, a puzzle board above.
A logistics officer who thinks in corners. Maybe he's exactly what we need. Or maybe I've lost my mind.
Somewhere between Earth and the Vothari War College, an old man slept. He dreamed of still water and biting fish. The shuttle docked at the Vothari War College, a monument to undefeated arrogance. Frank Calloway walked into the hall where 600 years of champions had entered. He looked entirely unimpressed.
This is Earth's champion, a fragile creature barely out of its cradle. So the humans sent a relic. I expected a warrior, not a grandfather. Did your species run out of soldiers? Warriors fight battles. I make them unnecessary. That's why they called me.
The Vothari cadets snickered. The Grandmaster's face tightened. No one had ever dismissed his mockery.
His probability of success is statistically negligible, less than 0.1%.
Statistics never taught a fish to bite. And I've caught a lot of fish.
They led him into the vast simulation chamber where the next war would be decided before a single shot was fired. The holographic board hummed to life, billions of variables waiting. The game was about to begin.
This is the crucible of war. Your species will be ground to dust, and the border dispute will end in our favor. What about food supply chains? Energy grid stability? If your civilians are starving, do your fleets still fight? Those are minor details. The only thing that matters is our firepower crushing your defenses. And if your fuel convoys are intercepted and destroyed, how do your ships move then?
Our logistics are robust. The simulator does not concern itself with hypothetical trade disruptions.
But Frank had spent a lifetime studying what happens when supply chains break. The Vothari had never bothered.
They've built a perfect sword. Never had to think about what happens when the hand that swings it cracks.
The simulation engine accepted the Vothari's first move. A massive invasion fleet jumped toward human space.
Witness the inevitable. Our fleets cross the border. Resistance is futile.
Earth's boundary shrank under the onslaught. The Vothari were already scripting their victory announcement. Frank did not counterattack. He didn't even defend. He simply issued a quiet order to blockade every Vothari trade lane.
Let's find out how long your grand fleet fights when the fuel never arrives. A blockade. Irrelevant. Our supply lines are redundant. This will hardly delay us.
But the simulation model had never faced a complete supply cutoff. It sputtered as freighters vanished from the board.
The invasion fleet's fuel consumption now exceeds resupply. Forward momentum has decreased by 40%.
They built a machine that only knows how to swing. Never thought about what happens when the arm breaks.
The Vothari advanced ground to a crawl. Ships stalled in deep space, unable to maneuver without fuel.
This is a minor inconvenience. We will smash through with sheer firepower.
But the simulation could not compute sheer firepower without fuel. Frustration crept into the Grand Master's voice. Frank simply watched, his face calm. The first move was not a strike, but a question the Vothari had never been asked. The second command was a scalpel. Frank severed every supply line, fuel convoys, ammunition freighters, food shipments, all gone from the board.
Fuel reserves are now catastrophic. The fleet has less than 6% operational capacity remaining.
Impossible. We have not even engaged the enemy. Launched the deep strike, bypassed the blockade, and resupply from forward depots.
The simulation computed the deep strike. Warships drifted powerless, magazines empty, before reaching the first waypoint.
This is an error. Our doctrine is built on decisive battle, not this. Fight me, human. You are right. You are built for battle. Pity war is decided by who has the last can of fuel.
The Grandmaster's hand hovered over the override console, trembling. The simulation refused his input.
There must be a counter. A doctrine override. I refuse to lose to a logistics clerk.
The simulation's core algorithms cannot be overridden. The invasion is no longer viable.
Frank said nothing. The silence was heavier than any counterattack. The Vothari offensive was dead, and the game was only 2 moves old. His third move had no fleet coordinates. Frank simply loaded a population morale degradation model into the simulation variables. The board lit with unrest. Simulated Vothari civilians took to the streets, hungry and furious.
Civilian unrest now exceeds 90% of all core worlds. Economic productivity is in freefall.
You are tampering. This has no place in a war simulation.
The graphs showed Vothari currency collapsing, factories shuttered, armies deserting for lack of pay.
War is what happens to people, not just machines. You taught the simulator only half the equation. Absurd. The Vothari Empire would never...
Before he could finish, the simulation glitched. Entire sectors went dark. The program couldn't process its own collapse.
The Empire's capacity to wage war has dropped to 0. The simulation is collapsing under variables we never considered.
The Grandmaster stood frozen, the greatest military machine in galactic history rendered impotent by a model of hunger. The simulation ground to a halt. Holograms flickered, star systems dimmed, and the war machine went silent.
This is not war. Deploy your fleets, engage mine, and stop this cowardly evasion. War is not a duel. It's what happens when nations run out of money, patience, and will. You forgot 2 of those. You corrupted the simulation with irrelevant civilian data. It proves nothing.
The data was valid. The simulation processed it. Our doctrine simply never accounted for it.
The Vothari council chamber erupted in argument, centuries of triumphant tradition crumbling around them.
They've built a temple to battle, and I brought a calculator. Now they're angry at the math. I will not concede to a man who does not even fight. The War College does not bend.
Frank waited. In his experience, systems always break before pride does.
The game cannot continue under these conditions. A resolution must be reached.
Frank placed his fourth move. No fleet coordinates, a single formal document. Unconditional surrender. The terms demanded complete capitulation, disarmament, and permanent acknowledgement of human sovereignty.
The simulation has accepted the surrender terms. It is computing the strategic resolution autonomously.
The board erupted. Vothari homeworlds flickered and died. The Imperial fleet dissolved into shards of light. In seconds, the greatest empire in the galaxy was declared non-viable by its own war machine.
Stop this. This is not a valid war game outcome.
The simulation is deterministic. The Empire's collapse is the logical result of 4 sequential non-combat actions.
4 moves. They would have lost in 1 if they'd known what they were fighting.
The Grand Master stared at the silent board, centuries of undefeated war games evaporated by a logistical exegete. The game was over. The Vothari had lost without a single battle. Frank leaned back as if he'd just balanced a fishing rod.
I refuse this outcome. Override the simulation, launch the entire strategic reserve, and crush the human systems directly.
The simulation accepted the override command and then showed the final, unavoidable cost. Vothari infrastructure shattered, entire planetary economies flatlined, the home world itself transmitted unconditional surrender.
The simulation is definitive. The Vothari Empire has been dismantled economically and socially. No military action can reverse it.
The war game locked in its conclusion, total human victory. The board froze, unchangeable.
Void taken machine. There must be a way.
In the distant observation room, Captain Elena Voss exhaled for what felt like the first time in weeks.
He did it. An old fisherman just sank an empire with a ledger book.
The Vothari Council sat paralyzed, their undefeated tradition reduced to a single, undeniable data log. The greatest war college in the galaxy had lost in 4 moves. The final casualty was not a ship, but an illusion. The Vothari Council reconvened in the circular chamber, the replay logs of Frank's 4 moves illuminating every face.
Analysis confirms. The human did not defeat our fleets. He defeated our entire definition of war.
The Grand Master sat motionless, his silence heavier than any outburst.
Blockade, supply severance, civilian morale collapse, unconditional surrender. 4 non-combat variables broke our system.
Some counselors demanded the result be voided, claiming the simulation was corrupted. But the data was immutable.
Altering the definition of victory after the fact would be a greater defeat than this simulation.
In the observation gallery, Elena watched the proud Vothari navigate a shock no battle had ever given them.
They're not arguing with me anymore. They're arguing with their own reflection. That's the only opponent left.
The chamber fell quiet, the weight of 6 centuries pressing on every Vothari soul. Somewhere in the silence, the first fracture of certainty cracked, but acceptance was still a long way off. Chancellor Virek rose from his seat, the only Vothari in the chamber who looked at the data without flinching.
The simulation was not corrupted. Our doctrine was incomplete. To reject the result now would be to reject truth itself.
The chamber stilled. Even the Grand Master lifted his head, his 4 eyes meeting Virek's steady gaze.
You would have us admit that 6 centuries of victory were built on a lie.
I would have us admit that we overlooked the foundation of war. Better to rebuild than collapse under our own ignorance.
The Grand Master's jaw tightened, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, he nodded.
The Vothari War College concedes. The border will be drawn according to the outcome of this game.
The words hung in the air like a verdict. 600 years ended by a ledger.
They're finally reading the fine print. That's where wars are really lost.
Frank didn't move. He had no victory speech, just the quiet certainty of a man who'd been right all along. Before the council had fully absorbed the silence, Chancellor Virek called up a new holographic directive.
Effective immediately, the War College will integrate non-kinetic variables into every level of strategic education.
The syllabus unrolled across the holoboard. Supply chain fragility, civilian morale dynamics, economic attrition. For the first time in 6 centuries, the cadets would study what happened when the enemy never fired a shot.
We extend an invitation. A chair at this college to teach what no commander here understood.
A chair. In your war college.
It has never been offered to an outsider, but the data demands it.
They're handing me a chalkboard after I broke their blackboard. Next, they'll ask me to grade their homework.
The offer hung between them, heavier than any battle plan, an empire asking its dismantler to teach it how to rebuild. Frank let the silence stretch. The galaxy's most powerful military college waited on the answer of a fisherman.
I appreciate the offer, but I am retired. The fish don't feed themselves.
You would refuse a position of supreme honor.
I didn't come here for honor. I came because a friend asked.
The Vothari exchanged glances. Ambition they understood. Lack of it was a language they'd never learned.
Your demonstration has reshaped our doctrine. Why would you not wish to cement that legacy?
Legacy is for people who need to be remembered. I just need to know the lake's still quiet.
Zolthar's mouth opened, closed. He had offered the galaxy's greatest prize, and the old man had compared it to a silent morning.
They think I am declining a throne, but all I hear is a clock ticking on the fishing season. Teach your cadets that wars are lost in supply chains, not battlefields. That's all the teaching I have.
The offer dissolved into the quiet. Frank didn't need a chair in their college. He had a boat waiting on Earth. Before Frank could stand, Zolthar gestured toward a side chamber. The council had dissolved, leaving only a humbled general and an old man with a quiet smile.
I have spent 3 centuries in the art of war. Tell me, at what moment did you know you had won?
Before I placed the first move. The moment you called civilians minor details, I knew the game was already over.
Zolthar's jaw tightened, but he did not interrupt. The arrogance that had greeted Frank at the door was gone.
Your fleet was a masterpiece, but war isn't won by masterpieces. It's won by who runs out of food last. I didn't need to sink a single ship. I just had to show your own machine how fragile its foundations were.
The Grand Master stared at the cold holoboard beyond the glass, its dark surface reflecting nothing.
Blockade, supply cut, civilian morale collapse, surrender terms. That was all. 4 moves. 3 more than necessary.
Frank stood, and this time Zolthar didn't stop him. The lesson hung in the air, heavier than any tactical manual. The fisherman went home. In the Grand Assembly Hall, Grandmaster Zolthar stood before the silent ranks of his war college.
The Vothari War College will rebuild its curriculum. From this day, we study not only battle, but the foundations that sustain it.
The border dispute was settled before a single life was lost, decided by a simulation that had modeled the wrong war. Frank Calloway walked through the vast hall toward the exit, cadets parting around him.
4 non-combat moves dismantled our empire. He declined a throne. I do not know whether to admire or fear that.
He didn't look back. His shadow stretched before him, thrown by the cold red light of the Vothari banners. Behind him, the Grand Master's observation chair sat empty, a silence louder than any command. In a lecture hall, the new doctrine was already being drafted. Supply chains, civilian morale, economic collapse added to the Temple of War. The greatest military academy in the galaxy began to learn what an old man with a fishing rod had always known. Frank's shuttle lifted off, leaving behind a war college that would never see battle the same way again. The shuttle descended through a steel-gray sky and settled onto a quiet Earth landing pad. Frank Calloway stepped off with the same small bag he'd left with, No fanfare, no delegation.
You look like you just got back from a fishing trip, not a war game that rewrote galactic doctrine.
Only difference is the Vothari didn't require a license.
They offered you a seat at the high table. How could you say no?
Because I already have a seat. It's in a boat, in the middle of a lake, and it doesn't come with politics.
The border dispute was officially closed that evening. No shots fired, no soldiers lost, just an old man's logic.
He didn't just win a game. He showed them the glass they'd been staring through, and they shattered it themselves.
Don't overthink it, Captain. I just asked a few questions they'd never bothered to ask themselves.
He walked away from the pad, toward the lakeside, and the night settled in around him like a familiar coat. He arrived at the cabin just before dawn. The lake was exactly as he'd left it. Still, dark, alive under the surface.
Still water. Good.
He checked the boat lines, ran a hand over the hull. Everything was tight, dry, and ready. He scattered the koi feed and watched them circle. Orange against gray, living proof that small things matter.
Someone followed the feeding schedule. I'll have to thank Elena.
By sunrise, he had cast a line into the middle of the lake, the bobber a single eye on the water.
No war games or empires. Just the temperature drop and the hatch timing. That's real strategy. Peace is a simple thing. Most warriors never find it. A fisherman already has it.
The sun climbed higher, and Frank Calloway became invisible, a man to whom the galaxy owed a debt it would never fully understand. The sunset came quietly, turning the lake into a sheet of gold and copper. He hadn't moved for hours. The bobber was still, the lines slack, the world holding its breath.
They're probably still arguing over the replay logs, trying to find where they went wrong.
The greatest war college in the galaxy had been rewritten in a single day. But here, only the ripples mattered.
If I'd stayed, I'd be in a lecture hall right now drawing supply chain diagrams for cadets who'd never been hungry.
A heron crossed the sky, its wings silent, and Frank felt the boat shift with a gentle pulse of water.
War is just another system. You find the dependencies, you trace the loop, and you pull the thread.
No comms unit sounded, no urgent summons. The only signal was the lap of water against the hull.
Enough. Let the galaxy learn its lesson. I have fish to catch.
The bobber dipped. He pulled the line, and a small fish flashed silver before he let it go, returning it to the quiet deep. The last warmth bled from the sky and the stars emerged, cold, distant, and uncountable. Frank shifted in the boat, tilting his head back until the hull cradled him like a cupped hand.
Up there, they're still trying to understand what happened. Down here, the water doesn't care who won or lost.
A thin band of the Milky Way cut the sky in half, the same stars that rimmed the Vothari homeworld.
I could have been a monument, but a monument just stands there. A fisherman gets to watch the herons.
The sky wheeled slowly, and the universe hung there, vast and indifferent, just as it always had.
I taught them to read the fine print. Maybe one day they'll teach someone else. The galaxy could use a few more fishermen.
Somewhere on a Vothari data slate, a single glowing token still marked the 4 moves. But here, nothing was recorded.
Peace isn't the absence of war. It's the presence of a quiet lake. And I've got a whole lake to myself.
He closed his eyes, and the boat drifted until it was indistinguishable from the dark water. The camera pulled back, the boat shrinking to a dark speck on a silver lake. The stars took over, the Milky Way pouring across the field of view like spilled opal, and then Earth itself, a blue marble turning in the black, silent and indifferent to the empires below. Somewhere in those pinpricks of light, the Vothari were rewriting a doctrine they had sworn would never change. One man, a fishing rod, and a logistics manual had ended a war before it began. 4 moves: blockade, supply cut, sublilian morale, surrender. And when they offered him a throne in the Temple of War, He went back to the only thing that made sense, a small boat on a quiet lake. The galaxy would remember the 4 moves. The fishermen would forget them by morning. Some stories end with a bang. This one ends with a bobber drifting on a midnight lake, and the universe, for all its wars, never noticed a thing.